The Meridian S bridge hummed with the familiar symphony of deep space, quantum drives cycling through their maintenance routines, atmospheric processors maintaining their steady rhythm, and the soft chime of sensor arrays sweeping the void for anything worth investigating. Captain Elena Vasquez had grown to love this particular brand of cosmic white noise during her 7 years commanding research vessels, though she'd never admit it made her drowsy during the night shift. "Captain, we're picking up something unusual on long-range sensors," Lieutenant Torres called from the communications station, his voice carrying that particular note of excitement that usually meant either a breakthrough discovery or imminent disaster. In Elena's experience, the universe had a twisted sense of humor about which one it would be. Elena swiveled her command chair toward the main display, watching as the holographic representation of their surrounding space flickered to life. A pulsing red dot appeared at the edge of their sensor range, broadcasting what appeared to be a distress signal. "How unusual are we talking, Torres?" "Scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is interesting asteroid formation and 10 is something that wants to eat the ship." "Approximately a 7, Captain." "The signal is definitely artificial, but the language algorithms can't make sense of it. It's like nothing in our databases." "Wonderful. Plot an intercept course, but keep us at a respectful distance. I prefer my first contact scenarios with adequate escape routes." Elena stood, smoothing her uniform jacket out of habit. "How long until we reach the signal?" 4 hours at current velocity, Captain." "Perfect. That gives me just enough time to finish the paperwork for our last discovery and maybe grab some actual food instead of whatever the replicator thinks passes for coffee these days." Elena headed toward her ready room, pausing at the threshold. "Oh, and Torres. If that signal suddenly changes to anything resembling 'we come in peace' or 'resistance is futile,' wake me immediately. I like to be conscious for the potentially civilization-ending moments." 4 hours later, Elena found herself wishing she'd been joking about the civilization-ending possibilities. The Meridian hung in space before a sight that defied every protocol in the Exploration Corps manual, a sleek, crystalline vessel that seemed to bend light around its hull, creating prismatic rainbows that danced across the viewscreen. The ship was clearly damaged, with sections of its translucent exterior cracked and dim, but even wounded, it possessed an alien beauty that made Elena's breath catch. "Biosigns, Commander Hayes?" Elena asked her first officer, a steady woman whose calm demeanor had gotten them out of more scrapes than Elena cared to count. "1 life form, Captain. Humanoid configuration, but the readings are unusual. Elevated body temperature, different brain wave patterns. Definitely not human." "Well, that's refreshingly honest of our sensors for once. Usually they just shrug and tell us, probably organic." Elena studied the damaged vessel, noting the way its remaining functional sections pulsed with a soft, rhythmic glow. "Can we establish a connection with their ship?" "Negative, Captain. Their communication systems appear to be offline. However, I'm detecting massive power fluctuations in what might be their reactor core. If those readings are accurate, they have maybe 6 hours before total system failure." Elena weighed their options, knowing that first contact protocols demanded extreme caution while her conscience insisted that leaving someone to die in the void wasn't exactly the diplomatic approach either. "Beam the survivor directly to Medical Bay 3 and establish a containment field. Full environmental isolation until we know what we're dealing with." "And Hayes?" "Yes, Captain. Have Dr. Patel standing by with the universal translator and a very large cup of her patience. Something tells me we're going to need both." The medical bay's sterile white walls seemed to glow with anticipation as Elena entered, her footsteps echoing softly against the polished floor. Dr. Patel stood beside the biobed, her dark eyes focused intently on the readout scrolling across multiple displays. The containment field shimmered between them and their unexpected guest, creating a barely visible barrier that would contain any potential biological hazards while still allowing for observation. Elena's first glimpse of their rescue made her understand why the sensors had been confused. The woman, and she was clearly female despite the alien readings, appeared remarkably human at first glance. She lay unconscious on the biobed, her breathing steady and her vital signs surprisingly stable considering her ship had been falling apart around her. Her skin possessed a subtle luminescence that seemed to come from within, casting the faintest glow against the medical equipment. Her hair, a striking silver white that seemed almost metallic in the artificial light, fell in waves around her face. But it was her ears that marked her as definitely not human. They were elongated and pointed, extending upward from her skull with an elegant curve that reminded Elena of ancient Earth depictions of elves. The ears twitched slightly as she slept, apparently sensitive to the sounds around her despite her unconscious state. "Fascinating bone structure," Dr. Patel murmured, adjusting her medical scanner. "The cranial configuration suggests enhanced auditory capabilities, possibly even the ability to perceive frequencies we can't detect. And look at this, her cellular structure shows remarkable regenerative properties. Those injuries that should have taken weeks to heal are already showing significant improvement. Any idea when our guest might wake up for the grand tour and cultural exchange?" Elena asked, settling into one of the medical bay's chairs. She'd learned long ago that alien encounters rarely followed convenient schedules. Her brain activity suggests she's been in some kind of induced stasis, probably a survival mechanism triggered by the trauma. She could wake up in minutes or hours. There's really no way to. The alien woman's eyes snapped open with startling suddenness, revealing irises of brilliant gold that seemed to catch and reflect every light source in the room. She took in her surroundings with the rapid, systematic assessment of someone trained for combat, her gaze fixing immediately on Elena through the containment field. When she spoke, her voice carried a melodic quality despite the obvious anger in her tone. "Keth morandi sir velith naren." The words flowed like music, but her posture suggested she was asking anything but friendly questions. The universal translator chirped to life, its mechanical voice providing a stilted interpretation: where, location, you, taken, prisoner, place. Elena raised her hands in what she hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "You're aboard the research vessel Meridian. You were rescued from your damaged ship. I'm Captain Elena Vasquez, and this is Dr. Patel. We're here to help." The translator worked its magic, and the woman's golden eyes narrowed as she processed the information. She swung her legs over the side of the bio-bed with fluid grace, her stance immediately shifting to one of readiness despite her obvious injuries. When she replied, her voice carried the unmistakable authority of someone accustomed to command. "Kira Santhaler Solari Federation. You, humans, enemies. Release me or face consequences." Elena blinked at the directness of the threat, then couldn't help but smile. "Well, that's certainly cutting through the diplomatic niceties. I appreciate directness in my potential interstellar incidents." She stood slowly, keeping her movements non-threatening. "However, Kira of the Solari Federation, I'm afraid I can't release you just yet. Your ship was about to explode, your life support was failing, and you were unconscious. Call it excessive human courtesy, but we generally like to make sure our rescues won't immediately die if we let them wander around." Kira's pointed ears twitched as the translator conveyed Elena's words, and something resembling confusion flickered across her features. "You claim rescue. Humans destroy Solari worlds. You take prisoners for information. I can see how that might create some communication difficulties," Elena said thoughtfully. "Let me clarify our position. We've never heard of the Solari Federation, we definitely haven't destroyed any of your worlds, mostly because we didn't know they existed until about 20 minutes ago. And our prisoner-taking policy is generally limited to keeping people from accidentally killing themselves in our oxygen-rich environment." Dr. Patel stepped forward, her medical scanner still focused on their guest. "Captain, her stress indicators are through the roof. Heart rate elevated, adrenaline spiking. She's preparing for combat." As if to prove the doctor's point, Kira moved with shocking speed, her hands finding some kind of concealed device at her waist. A shimmer of energy surrounded her briefly before she pressed against the containment field, testing its strength with the methodical precision of someone who'd escaped from plenty of prison cells before. "Okay, That's definitely not standard medical equipment, Elena observed as sparks began to fly from where Kira's device met the containment field. Dr. Patel, please tell me that field is rated for whatever she's doing to it. It should hold, but Captain, she's using some kind of quantum resonance device. If she finds the right frequency. The containment field flickered and died with a sound like breaking glass. Kira stepped forward, her golden eyes fixed on Elena with predatory intensity. She spoke again, her musical voice now carrying an unmistakable threat. Now you face Kira Santhaler in honorable combat. Your death will be swift. Elena looked at the alien warrior advancing toward her, noted the way Kira's pointed ears were laid back like an angry cat's, and couldn't help but grin. You know, Kira, I'm starting to think there might be some cultural misunderstandings we need to work through. Would you be terribly offended if I suggested we try the talking thing before we move on to the honorable death portion of our relationship? The cargo bay of the Meridian had been hastily cleared for what Elena was beginning to think of as the most unusual diplomatic negotiation of her career. Kira stood at one end of the cavernous space, her silver hair catching the overhead lights as she performed what appeared to be some kind of ritualistic combat preparation. Her movements flowed with predatory grace, each gesture precise and purposeful as she tested the weight and balance of a curved weapon she'd somehow produced from her damaged clothing. Elena entered from the opposite end carrying a small table, 2 chairs, and what might have been the ship's entire supply of coffee. She set everything up in the center of the bay with the casual efficiency of someone who'd hosted stranger dinner parties, then called out to her opponent. I brought refreshments. I figured if we're going to have a formal combat situation, we might as well be civilized about it. Kira's pointed ears twitched in what Elena was learning to recognize as confusion. The translator worked overtime as Kira responded, her melodic voice carrying obvious frustration. This, not proper, combat preparation. Where weapons? Where battle circle? You mock Solari traditions. Not mocking, just adapting. Elena pulled out one of the chairs and sat down, pouring coffee into 2 cups with steady hands. See, the thing about human combat traditions is that we've evolved past the whole fight to the death over misunderstandings approach. We find it cuts down significantly on repeat customers. Steam rose from the cups in delicate spirals, carrying the rich aroma of genuine earth-grown beans throughout the cargo bay. Elena had been saving her private stash for special occasions, and she figured first contact with a potentially hostile alien warrior definitely qualified. Kira approached cautiously, her weapon still held in a ready position but her golden eyes fixed on the strange setup with obvious bewilderment. You offer food to enemy before battle? Coffee, technically, though I understand the confusion. And I'm not entirely convinced we're enemies. Seems like we might have gotten our wires crossed somewhere in the whole humans are terrible destroyers of worlds narrative. Elena gestured to the empty chair across from her. Care to enlighten me about how exactly my species managed to earn such a colorful reputation without me noticing? The alien warrior circled the table like a suspicious cat, her enhanced hearing apparently picking up sounds Elena couldn't detect. The cargo bay's environmental systems hummed quietly around them, maintaining perfect atmospheric conditions while recycling the air they breathed. After several tense moments, Kira slowly lowered her weapon and settled into the opposite chair, though she kept her posture ready for immediate action. Humans came to Solari space 3 cycles ago. Ships like metal spears, weapons that burned through our shields like tissue. They spoke of peace while preparing for war. Elena sipped her coffee thoughtfully, watching Kira's face as the translator worked through the explanation. 3 cycles, that would be about 6 Earth years, assuming your cycles match ours reasonably close. Problem is, Kira, 6 years ago humanity barely had functional faster-than-light travel. We were still getting excited about successfully traveling between star systems without accidentally creating temporal paradoxes. Kira's ears flattened against her skull, a gesture Elena was beginning to recognize as the alien equivalent of a skeptical frown. You deny the attack on Veltheri Prime? The orbital bombardment that turned our crystal cities to glass? I absolutely deny it, mostly because this is literally the first time I've heard about crystal cities, and they sound far too beautiful for humans to have invented bombardment-resistant architecture. Elena pushed the second cup of coffee toward Kira. Try it. It's a human tradition called sharing beverages while discussing potentially catastrophic interspecies misunderstandings. Kira lifted the cup with obvious suspicion, her enhanced senses apparently analyzing its contents before she took a tentative sip. Her golden eyes widened with surprise, and for the first time since awakening, something other than hostility crossed her features. This warming liquid, it carries complex molecular structures. Stimulant properties, but also comfort compounds. Caffeine and happiness, basically. Though some philosophers argue there's no meaningful difference between the two. Elena leaned back in her chair, studying the alien woman across from her. Tell me about your people, Kira. What were the Solari like before this war started? The question seemed to catch Kira off guard. She took another sip of coffee, her pointed ears relaxing slightly as the warmth spread through her system. When she spoke again, her voice carried notes of sadness that the translator couldn't quite convey. Solari were builders, creators of beauty. Our cities sang with harmonic frequencies that promoted growth and healing. We cultivated bioluminescent forests that responded to emotional resonance, creating symphonies of light when our people gathered in celebration. Elena felt a pang of genuine loss for worlds she'd never seen. That sounds incredible. Like something out of our most optimistic science fiction stories. We're incredible, Kira corrected, her grip tightening on the coffee cup. Until humans came with their silent ships and electromagnetic weapons. They said they came seeking trade, but their thoughts were full of conquest and exploitation. Wait. Elena held up a hand, her mind catching on something important. Their thoughts. Are you telling me your people are telepathic? Kira's ears perked up again, this time with what might have been surprise. All sentient species possess some degree of mental resonance. How else would beings communicate true intentions beneath surface words? Elena stared at her coffee cup, pieces of a much larger puzzle beginning to fall into place. Kira, humans aren't telepathic. We communicate exclusively through language, body language, and occasionally interpretive dance when we've had too much to drink. If someone came to your people claiming to represent humanity while projecting thoughts of conquest, they definitely weren't human. The alien warrior's golden eyes narrowed as she processed this information. You claim ignorance of mental communication. This is possible. Not only possible, but tragically accurate. We're basically stumbling around the galaxy hoping our good intentions come through in our terrible pronunciation of alien languages. Elena leaned forward, her expression growing serious. Kira, I think someone has been playing both our species against each other. The question is who benefits from humans and Solari destroying each other. Before Kira could respond, the cargo bay's communication system crackled to life with Commander Hayes' voice. Captain, we're detecting multiple ship signatures dropping out of hyperspace. Configuration unknown, but they're moving fast and broadcasting what sounds like a very unfriendly message. Elena was on her feet instantly, but Kira moved even faster, her warrior reflexes bringing her to combat readiness in a heartbeat. The alien woman's face had gone pale, her pointed ears flattening against her skull in what Elena now recognized as fear. The Devourers, Kira whispered, her musical voice carrying a note of terror that needed no translation. They found us. Well, Elena said, grabbing both coffee cups as alarms began blaring throughout the ship, I was wondering when this day would get really interesting. Any chance these Devourers are the friendly, misunderstood type who just want to chat about our feelings? Kira's response was to draw her weapon again, but this time she positioned herself beside Elena rather than opposite her. They are the true enemy, Captain Vasquez. The ones who destroyed both our worlds and made us blame each other for the devastation. Elena felt a grim smile cross her face as the Meridian shuddered under the first impact from weapons fire. In that case, Kira Santhaler of the Solari Federation, How do you feel about postponing our cultural exchange program in favor of some good old-fashioned alliance building? The alien warrior's golden eyes blazed with fierce determination as she responded, her voice carrying the promise of violence to come. I believe, Captain, that would be most acceptable. The engineering deck of the Meridian had transformed into something resembling organized chaos, with holographic displays flickering between critical system warnings and what Elena privately thought looked like very expensive fireworks. Sparks cascaded from overhead conduits as the ship's quantum drive struggled against forces that shouldn't have existed according to any physics textbook she'd ever read. Captain, we've got a problem, Chief Engineer Rodriguez called over the din of protesting machinery. The quantum field harmonics are completely destabilized. It's like someone's playing the universe's worst violin concerto directly into our drive core. Elena and Kira worked side by side at the main engineering console, their earlier hostilities forgotten in the face of imminent catastrophic failure. The alien woman's pointed ears twitched constantly as she monitored frequencies beyond human perception, her golden eyes reflecting the chaotic light show surrounding them. The Devourers use harmonic disruptor weapons, Kira explained, her fingers dancing across controls with practiced efficiency. They analyze the resonant frequency of your technology and then broadcast counterharmonics to tear it apart from the inside. Wonderful. It's like having houseguests who rearrange your furniture by setting it on fire. Elena watched the quantum field readings spiral toward critical levels. Please tell me the Solari figured out some kind of defense against this musical nightmare. We learned to modulate our shield frequencies in real time, creating a constantly shifting harmonic matrix that couldn't be countered. Kira's hands paused over the controls. But your human technology operates on different principles. I would need to understand your quantum drive systems to adapt the technique. Elena gestured toward the bewildering array of displays surrounding them. Consider this your crash course in Human Engineering 101. Fair warning though, we tend to build things with the philosophy of, if it works, don't ask too many questions about why. The ship shuddered again as another wave of harmonic disruption swept through their systems. Emergency lighting flickered on as primary power fluctuated, casting everything in an eerie red glow that made the engineering deck look like something from Elena's least favorite nightmares. Captain, Commander Hayes' voice crackled through the communication system, we're losing structural integrity on decks 4 through 7. Whatever you're doing down there, we need it to work soon or we're going to find out what vacuum tastes like. Vacuum tastes like regret and poor life choices, Elena muttered, then raised her voice. Understood, Hayes. Keep those Devourers busy for another few minutes while we perform some highly experimental engineering magic. Kira had managed to interface with the quantum drive's control systems using some kind of crystalline device from her belt. The crystal pulsed with soft light as it established connections with the ship's neural network, creating a bridge between Solari biotechnology and human engineering that should have been impossible. Your quantum drives are surprisingly elegant, Kira said, her concentration evident in the way her ears had perked forward. Crude compared to Solari harmonic crystals, but the underlying mathematics are sound. I can work with this. I'll take surprisingly elegant as a compliment, considering our usual reviews tend toward miraculously functional despite all evidence to the contrary. Elena monitored the power distribution systems while Kira worked her technological magic. How long do you need? Time is relative in quantum mechanics, Kira replied, which Elena decided was probably the most unhelpful answer possible under their current circumstances. The harmonic disruption intensified, causing the quantum field to oscillate wildly between stable and catastrophic failure. Elena watched the readings with the kind of fascinated horror usually reserved for natural disasters and political campaigns. You know, Kira, I'm starting to think your Devourers have a seriously twisted sense of humor. Who designs a weapon that makes its target's technology sing off-key before it explodes? The Devourers find discord aesthetically pleasing, Kira said, her voice tight with concentration. They consume harmony and create chaos wherever they travel. It is their nature. Well, that's deeply disturbing on multiple philosophical levels. Elena rerouted power from non-essential systems, which at this point included everything except life support and the increasingly unreliable quantum drive. Any chance we can give them some feedback about their artistic choices? Maybe suggest they take up watercolors instead of interstellar warfare. Kira's crystal device suddenly blazed with brilliant light, and Elena felt something fundamental shift in the ship's quantum field. The chaotic oscillations began to smooth out, forming complex wave patterns that seemed to dance rather than convulse. "There," Kira said, though she kept her hands on the controls. "I have created a harmonic shield matrix using your quantum field generators. The frequency will shift continuously, making it impossible for the devourers to establish a lock." The immediate improvement was obvious. The sparks stopped flying from overhead conduits, the emergency lighting switched back to normal illumination, and the general sense of impending doom decreased by what Elena estimated was at least 40%. "Outstanding work," Elena said, then keyed her communicator. "Hayes, how are we looking up there?" "Much better, Captain. Whatever you did, the Devourer's weapons are having significantly less effect. They seem confused by our sudden improvement in structural integrity." "Excellent. Confused enemies are my second favorite kind, right after the ones who decide to go home and take up peaceful gardening." Elena turned to Kira. "How long can you maintain this harmonic matrix?" "Indefinitely, as long as your quantum drive remains stable and I can monitor the frequency modulations." Kira's ears twitched as she listened to harmonics Elena couldn't detect. "But Captain, there is something else. The Devourer's ship signatures. I recognize the configuration. These are the same vessels that attacked both Solari Prime and your colony ships." Elena felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place with uncomfortable clarity. "They've been playing us against each other from the beginning. Attack human colonies with ships that look human, attack Solari worlds with vessels that match our configuration. Creating mutual hatred between potential allies while they harvest the resources from our conflict," Kira finished, her golden eyes blazing with anger. "They feed on discord and division, growing stronger while we destroy each other." The ship shook again, but this time it was the controlled vibration of the Meridian's weapons systems charging to full power. Elena smiled grimly as she recognized the sensation. "Well then, I think it's time we gave the Devourers a taste of what happens when their dinner guests stop fighting each other and start cooperating." She activated the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. We're about to engage an enemy that's been manipulating both human and Solari civilizations into mutual destruction. Our new ally, Kira of the Solari Federation, will be coordinating our defense systems with her people's harmonic technology. Let's show these cosmic puppet masters what happens when their strings get cut." Kira looked at Elena with something approaching amazement. "You would trust me with your ship's weapons systems? After everything my people have done to yours?" "Kira, your people didn't do anything to us except defend themselves against what they thought were human attackers. The real enemy is out there, and they're about to learn that humans and Solari working together are significantly more dangerous than either species fighting alone." The alien warrior's pointed ears perked up with what Elena was learning to recognize as determination. "In that case, Captain Vasquez, I believe it is time to compose a harmony that the Devourers will find most discordant." Elena couldn't help but grin as alarms began sounding throughout the ship, but this time they were the controlled alerts of a vessel preparing for combat rather than the panicked warnings of impending system failure. "I love it when a plan comes together, especially when it involves turning the tables on manipulative cosmic parasites." Outside the Meridian, the Devourer vessels continued their assault, unaware that their carefully orchestrated symphony of destruction was about to become a duet between former enemies who had just discovered the true meaning of harmony. The silence that followed the destruction of the Devourer fleet felt almost as overwhelming as the battle itself had been. Elena stood in the Meridian's observation deck, watching debris from the enemy vessels drift past the viewport like metallic snow, while Kira worked quietly at a portable console she'd constructed from salvaged Solari technology and human engineering components. "You know," Elena said, breaking the contemplative quiet, "when I woke up this morning, defeat ancient manipulative alien parasites wasn't on my to-do list. I'm going to have to revise my daily planning strategies. Kira's pointed ears twitched in what Elena had learned was the Solari equivalent of gentle amusement. The Devourers had been orchestrating conflicts across this galaxy sector for over 200 cycles. Your human expression about unexpected schedule changes seems inadequate. Fair point. Though I have to admit, watching you reprogram their own harmonic weapons to turn their ships into impromptu fireworks displays was deeply satisfying from an artistic perspective. Elena settled into the chair beside Kira, noting how the alien woman's golden eyes had lost their constant wariness. What's the status on the communication array you're building? Nearly complete. This device will broadcast on frequencies that can reach both human and Solari space simultaneously, using quantum entanglement principles to bypass the communication barriers the Devourers established. Kira made a final adjustment to the crystalline components, her fingers moving with practiced precision. Both our peoples need to learn the truth about who their real enemy was. Elena watched the delicate interplay between human circuitry and Solari biotechnology, marveling at how seamlessly the two approaches to engineering had merged under Kira's guidance. It's remarkable how well our technologies complement each other. Almost like they were designed to work together. Perhaps they were, Kira said softly. The mathematical principles underlying both human quantum mechanics and Solari harmonic resonance suggest common origins. We may have been separated siblings rather than natural enemies. The communication array chimed softly as it established connections with distant star systems. Elena felt a mixture of anticipation and nervousness as she realized they were about to change the course of interstellar politics with what amounted to the galaxy's most important conference call. Meridian Control, this is Admiral Chen of the Human Colonial Fleet, a familiar voice crackled through the speakers. Captain Vasquez, your emergency transmission has reached all major human settlements. We're standing by for your report. Almost simultaneously, another voice joined the channel, speaking in the musical tones of the Solari language before the universal translator provided interpretation. This is High Commander Thelnara of the remaining Solari Defense Forces. We receive your harmonic resonance, Kira Santhaler. Speak your truth to both peoples. Elena looked at Kira, who nodded encouragingly. Taking a deep breath, Elena activated the transmission. Admiral Chen, High Commander Thelnara, this is Captain Elena Vasquez of the research vessel Meridian. I'm transmitting alongside Kira Santhaler of the Solari Federation. We have critical information about the conflict between our species that changes everything we thought we knew about this war. Over the next hour, Elena and Kira took turns explaining their discoveries about the Devourers' manipulation, providing censored data from the recent battle and testimony from Kira about the true nature of the attacks on Solari worlds. The silence from both human and Solari command structures grew increasingly heavy as the implications became clear. You're telling us, Admiral Chen said finally, that we've been fighting each other based on completely fabricated evidence. That these Devourers staged attacks from both sides to keep us at war. That is precisely what we are telling you, Kira replied, her musical voice carrying absolute conviction. The Devourers feed on conflict and discord. By keeping humans and Solari destroying each other, they weakened both civilizations while harvesting resources from the devastated worlds. High Commander Thelnara's response came through the translator with obvious emotion. The harmonic resonance signatures Kira Santhaler has provided match our records from the attack on Velthari Prime. These were not human weapons, but Devourer technology disguised to appear human. Elena felt a weight lifting from her shoulders as the truth finally emerged. The question now is what we do with this information. Our peoples have been at war for 6 years based on lies. How do we move forward? Carefully, Admiral Chen said with characteristic military pragmatism. But Captain, the tactical advantages of a human Solari alliance against the Devourers are obvious. Their technology complements ours in ways that could revolutionize both our defensive and exploratory capabilities. The Solari Council agrees, Thelnara added. Kira Santhaler, your actions in allying with Captain Vasquez and her crew demonstrate the potential for cooperation between our species. We propose a formal peace negotiation to begin immediately. Kira's ears perked forward with what Elena now recognized as hope mixed with determination. High Commander, I request permission to remain aboard the Meridian as a liaison between our peoples. Captain Vasquez has shown me that true strength comes not from conquest, but from the courage to trust former enemies and build something greater together. Elena felt a smile spreading across her face. Admiral, I formally request that the Meridian be designated as the site for preliminary peace negotiations. We seem to have developed some experience in cross-cultural communication under pressure. Approved, Captain. The colonial fleet will dispatch diplomatic teams to your coordinates immediately. Admiral Chen's voice carried a note of satisfaction. And Captain? Outstanding work. Both of you. As the formal communications ended, Elena found herself alone with Kira in the observation deck's quiet space. The debris from the Devourer ships had drifted away, leaving only stars visible through the viewport. So, Elena said, pouring 2 cups of coffee from the service she'd brought up earlier, how do you feel about becoming the galaxy's first interspecies diplomatic team? Fair warning, it probably involves a lot more paperwork and significantly fewer space battles. Kira accepted the coffee with what had become their informal ritual of shared trust. Captain Vasquez, 6 days ago I believed humans were my sworn enemies. Today, I consider you one of the finest warriors I have ever known, though you fight with compassion rather than weapons. You know, Kira, I think that might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said about my command style. Though I have to point out that technically, we did blow up quite a few enemy ships during our compassionate warrior routine. Only after exhausting all diplomatic alternatives, Kira pointed out solemnly, though her golden eyes sparkled with humor. Very civilized space battle conduct. Elena laughed, raising her coffee cup in a mock toast. To civilized space battles and the diplomatic solutions that make them necessary. To unexpected allies, Kira replied, touching her cup to Elena's, and the discovery that former enemies can become the strongest of friends. Outside the viewport, the stars shone with steady light, no longer seeming cold and distant but full of possibilities that Elena was just beginning to imagine. The war between humans and Solari was ending, but their partnership was just beginning. She had a feeling the galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place. You know what the best part is? Elena said, settling back in her chair with deep satisfaction. What is that, Captain? Tomorrow, I get to file the most unusual first contact report in human history. Mission summary: rescued alien warrior, discovered galactic conspiracy, prevented interspecies war, defeated ancient cosmic parasites, established lasting peace between civilizations, and only spilled coffee on the bridge once. They're going to think I made it all up. Kira's musical laughter filled the observation deck, a sound of pure joy that seemed to harmonize with the Meridian's gentle hum. Perhaps, Captain Vasquez, that is exactly as it should be. The best stories are always the ones too wonderful to believe. Elena couldn't argue with that logic. After all, she was living proof that sometimes the most impossible stories turned out to be the most true.